This lesson is on completing the square. When we get ready to complete the square, we have to be able to create what we call perfect trinomial squares. So to do that, what you need to do is take b, divide it by 2, and then you would square that. So in this case, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. We take that b, which is 6, we divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. So if I added a 9 to this, it would make it a perfect trinomial square. Because look, if I factor this, this is going to be equal to x plus 3 squared. That makes it a perfect trinomial square. All right, let's do this one here. Again, here's my ax squared plus bx plus c. So we take our b and we divide it by 2, and we square it. Now, if you'll notice, this doesn't go into it evenly, so typically what I suggest is that you go ahead and square the top and square the bottom, and just leave it as a fraction then, because it's easier to recognize that this is a perfect trinomial square. So again, if we were to factor this then, the way this would look like would say x plus, we would have 5 halves, and then that would be squared. Because if we factored this all the way or FOILed it all the way out, what we would get would be this expression right here. If we FOILed this all the way out, we would get this expression right here. So when it says solve by completing the square, the first step that you always want to do is you want to move c. We're going to move c by subtracting it from both sides. So now we have x squared plus 16x is equal to negative 60. Now we got to think what number we could add here to make this a perfect trinomial square. So we're going to take our b, divide it by 2, and square it. So 16 divided by 2 is 8, and then 8 squared is equal to 64. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 64 to this side, but what you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. So there I added 64 to both sides. On the left here, we're going to factor. That would be x plus 8 squared. On the right, we're going to simplify. Negative 60 plus 64 is 4. And now you have to think of this whole expression here being stuck and it's being squared. And so that's what we need to get rid of, is this square. So the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So I have this x plus 8, that's being squared, equals 4. So we're going to take the square root of both sides, but remember when you take the square root of a number, you take the plus or minus of the square root. The square root and the square are going to cancel out, leaving us with just x plus 8 equals plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2. Now what we need to do is get x by itself, so we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. So now we've got just x left on this side. Well, x is going to equal negative 8. The very first sign we see is plus 2, as well as negative 8, the second sign we see, minus 2. So let's clean this up. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. So these are the two values that x can be. We're going to complete the square with one more problem. Again, the first thing that we want to do is we want to move c, so we'll subtract it from both sides. And so now we have x squared plus 8x equals negative 17. Then we want to take our b, we want to divide by 2 and square it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So that's what we're going to add to both sides. So we add 16 to one side and to the other side. Now we factor on the left, so that would be x plus 4 squared equals negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1. Now we want to do the inverse of squaring, which is square rooting. So we take that x plus 4 squared equals negative 1, and we take the square root of both sides. But remember, when we take the square root of a number, we have to take the plus or minus of it. So this will cancel on this side, and we're left with x plus 4 equals positive or negative. The square root of negative 1 is actually just I. And now we're going to subtract 4 from both sides to get x by itself. So x is going to equal negative 4 plus I, as well as negative 4 minus I.